Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. Welcome to the morning banter. This is kind of a little bit of a time that I have a candid conversation with you guys and chat and talk before we get into the bulk of the podcast. Hope you had a wonderful week. I sure did. I went on a trip with my grandparents this last Thursday, and that was fun. Just a little day trip. Went out. We would have done eastern Idaho, but it's a little snowy there at the moment, so we went west into Oregon. I think we dropped by a town. The main reason I remember is just because the name was unique. I think it's Wallowa, Oregon, if I remember correctly. That was kind of a cool town to go through. We were talking with one of the ladies there at like the local library, and she told us that they had actually, like in August, maybe it was November, I can't remember which one she said, but they actually got like a tornado. It didn't touch down, but it like traveled across the town or above it, and it broke a ton of windows. So that's why when we were driving through, my grandparents and me were like, why are all the windows broken? And why is everyone getting their house's roofs redone? This is kind of weird. And then she kind of explained that. So it's kind of crazy to think in like a mountainous area, you can still have tornadoes. I thought it always had to be flat to have that occur for the winds and everything. But that was interesting. Also, I want to thank you guys for the support this last week. This last episode was the 7th most watched episode with 8 views. Yeah, I know, a lot, but still, it means a lot to see those numbers, to see that you guys are enjoying it, that you're listening to it, that it's being shared around. Please keep doing it. And thank you for that support. It means a lot to see that people are enjoying it and listening to it, and that the time and effort I put into is being well spent and bringing back to you guys. Also, another thing on like a practical sharing element, there is a YouTube channel, if you didn't know, for the podcast. And on that, there are short clips. So YouTube has like, you got your videos and then you got your shorts and posts. I think posts, you have to be a certain size to do them, but you can make your shorts like everyone's wanting. They're wanting short form to compete with TikTok and all that and everything. But on there, I do take 7 clips out of the main podcast and make clips out of them. So if you're you're wanting to share stuff around, if there's something I talked about that you're like, oh, my friend really needs to know about this, I want to share it, you don't want to share the full podcast, then go check out the YouTube channel. There might be some shorts on there that really fit what you're looking for, and then you can share those around, which will help the podcast and also inform people. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I want it to grow so that I can do this more, but chiefly because of that, I want it to grow up more so people can be informed and understand what's going around around the state. So please share those around if you hear something on the podcast that you find interesting and you think other people should know about it. And then lastly, I need your opinion on something. I'm considering making a separate episode that comes out on Friday. There would still be the main one with news and politics, but there would be a separate one that would have events that would come out on Friday instead of Sunday, which is when the usual one does. So that, Friday would be for events, and you'd just be a shorter one where it'd just be like the Treasure Valley, McCall, Cascade, type of thing, Eastern Idaho, Northern Idaho, and it'd just be events. So if you guys aren't interested in the events, you wouldn't have to listen to that. But if you do, you can. And then we'd have the main podcast, which would have the semi-usual format with then the news and the politics. And you can listen to that and you can kind of pick and choose whichever you like. With that said, if you're on Spotify, there will be a poll attached to this episode. If you're not on Spotify, then you can go to Twitter. I'll have a poll available there that you can give me back some feedback, or you don't have to use the poll. You can just message me and let me know. But yeah, let me know. Do you guys want it to separate, that events are a separate episode from the main thing, or you want to keep it all in one episode so that it's just one click play? Please let me know. I'll have the poll available there and you guys can vote, or you can just message it to me. That would mean a lot, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to figure out what works best for you. What's the best format for you guys? Is it that you want one big thing that you can listen to on your driving to work and then while you're doing stuff, or do you want it in smaller bits that you can kind of pick and choose what you need to consume and what you don't need to consume? Please let me know on that. With that said, a lot of like kind of technical housekeeping things, but we'll move into the bulk of the podcast here. Starting off with holidays and interesting events for the week, we have Monday the 13th of March. which is National Jewel Day, Napping Day, and Good Samaritan Day. As for history, just one thing. In 2019, the U.S. grounded all Boeing 737s after one crashed for the second time in Ethiopia. Nothing major in birthdays or deaths. Moving on to Tuesday. Tuesday, the 14th of March, is National Pie Day, the equation, not the edible type, and International Mathematics Day. As for history, in 1794, the cotton gin was invented, thus revolutionizing the cotton industry in the southern U.S. In 1900, the U.S. currency went to the gold standard after Congress passed the Currency Act. And lastly, in 1950, the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitive program began. As for birthdays, Tuesday was Albert Einstein's birthday, and in deaths, in 1883, Karl Marx died. In 1975, Susan Hayward died. And lastly, in 2018, Stephen Hawking died. Wednesday, the 15th of March, is World Consumer Rights Day. As for in history, in 1493, Christopher Columbus returned to Spain after his voyage to the New World. In 1783, George Washington gave an emotional speech asking his officers not to support the Nuremberg conspiracy. In 1962, the 5 research groups announced the discovery of antimatter. And lastly, in 1985, the first internet domain was registered called symbolics.com. As for birthdays, Wednesday was St. Nicholas's, Andrew Jackson's, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg's birthday. As for deaths, in 44 BC, Julius Caesar died. Next up is Thursday, the 16th of March. It appears there was either nothing or I forgot to do it on my script because I have nothing for history, birthdays, or deaths. But for national days, it is National Panda Day and National Freedom of Information Day. Next is Friday, the 17th of March, which is St. Patrick's Day. As for history, in 1935, Adolf Hitler ordered the rearmament of Germany, violating the Versailles Treaty. And lastly, in 1968, General Motors produced its 1 millionth automobile. As for birthdays, Friday was James Madison's birthday, and related to deaths, in 1983, Arthur Godfrey died. Saturday, the 18th of March, is National Supreme Sacrifice Day and Global Recycling Day. As for in history, in 1890, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck resigned after 19 years. And then lastly, in 1940, Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler met in Italy to discuss Benito joining Hitler in his war effort in the West. As for birthdays, Saturday was Rudolph Diesel's and Neville Chamberlain's birthday. In deaths, in 2017, Chuck Berry died. Lastly, we come to Sunday, the 19th of March, which is National Backyard Day, Chocolate Caramel Day, and Poultry Day. As for history, just one thing. In 1920, the U.S. Senate rejected the Treaty of Versailles for the second time. In birthdays, Sunday was David Livingston's and Adolf Eichmann's birthday, and is Bruce Willis's 67th birthday. In deaths, in 2008, Arthur C. Clarke died. Moving into events, the first area we have here is the Treasure Valley. In performances in Middleton Wednesday, the Treasure Valley Concert Band and Middleton High School Band will be performing a concert at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the middle school high school. Then moving to Meridian, Thursday, there is a St. Patrick's Child concert at 1 p.m. at the Meridian Child's Museum. Then in Caldwell, there is a Merry Wives of Windsor opera production at the College of Idaho. Check below for times and dates. Then in Nampa, Friday, there's the Blessing West Coast Tour at 7 p.m. at Nampa First Church of the Nazarene. Carrie Job, Cody Carnes, and Martin Smith will be performing. Then in Boise, Sunday, there is the Boise Jazz Society performance at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at 2900 West Chinden Boulevard. Tickets are $56.70 a piece. Also in Boise, Heather McMahon is performing at 7 p.m. at the Morrison Center. In Emmett next Tuesday, March 21st, there is the First Responder Appreciation Dinner at 7 p.m. at the Emmett Nazarene Church. And lastly, in performances in Boise next Wednesday, the 22nd, Kevin James will be performing at 8 p.m. at the Morrison Center. In fun events, in Boise Monday, the Discovery Center has a new exhibit called the Fans Strike Back, one of the largest Star Wars fan exhibits featuring items from fans around the world. In Meridian Monday, there is a Knights Chess Club meeting from 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the Meridian Public Library. Then in Nampa Tuesday, there is a homeschooler PE event at the Harvard Rec Center. Check below for times and prices. In Emmett Tuesday, there is a Road Less Traveled homeschool art class at 2:30 p.m. at the Grateful Gardens Art Studio. In Emmett Wednesday, there is a Soup Study and Compile event from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at St. Mary's Episcopalian Church. And then lastly, in fun events in Emmett Friday, there is a Historic Society Ladies Social at 501 East 1st Street, Emmett. Check below for more dates and stuff because that one was a little hazy. It looks like they're still figuring stuff out. In other events in Boise Monday, there is a snow school homeschool day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Bogus Basin Ski Resort. In Nampa Thursday, there is a rose pruning and care class from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the council chambers. It is free. You just need to register. And Boise Friday, there is a spring home show at 5 p.m. at 5610 North Glenwood Street. In Meridian Friday, there is a speed dating event at 7 p.m. at the Hidden Gem Event Center. And Nampa Saturday, there is an American Red Cross babysitter class from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Harvard Rec Center. In Nampa Saturday, there is a free spring craft and vendor fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 403 12th Avenue South at Nampa. In Emmett Saturday, there is a garden cleanup and compost class from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at 2701 East Quail Run Road, Emmett. In Meridian Saturday, there is the 48th annual St. Patrick's Cornered Beef Dinner and Auction from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Marist Hall. In Boise Saturday, there is a British Cars and Coffee get-together from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Chow Public Market and Eatery. And lastly, in other events in Boise Sunday, the Boise Depot has a free open house from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. There will be guided tours from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. For more information about anything talked about, go check the link in the description below. Moving on to Eastern Idaho, in performances in Twin Falls Tuesday, there is a Magic Valley baseball and softball comedy fundraiser show from 7:45 p.m. to 9 p.m. In Pocatello Friday, there is a 2023 Chrome in the Dome from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Idaho State University Halt Arena. And then lastly, in performances in Rupert Saturday, there is a Paint Just Like Bob Ross class from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Wilson Theater. In fun events in Rexburg Tuesday, there's a Creative Corner for teens at 4:30 p.m. at the Rexburg City Hall. Also in Rexburg Thursday, there is an open studio for adults at 10 a.m. at City Hall. In Rexburg Thursday also, there is an intro to watercolor class for adults at 7 p.m. at City Hall. Then moving to Pocatello Thursday, there is an open mic night from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the Station Square. Also in Pocatello Friday, there is a St. Patrick's Day Jazz and Stick event from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Gate City Coffee. In Pocatello Friday, there's bingo from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Pond Student Union Building. Then moving into Idaho Falls Friday, there is a chemistry show at 5 p.m. at the Water Springs Church. Then back to Pocatello Saturday, there's a Model Train Club open house from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Union Pacific Building. In other events in Pocatello Friday, there is an Eastern Idaho Agricultural Hall of Fame banquet at 5 p.m. at the Shoshone-Bannock Hotel and Event Center. In Jerome Saturday through Sunday, there is a gun show from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sunday. And then lastly, in Pocatello, March 25th, there is a homeschooler informational meeting from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Christ Church. For more information about anything talked about, go check the link in the description below. Moving a little further up north, we have McCall/Cascade area. In performances, just one in Cascade Saturday. There is a Mastering Mountain Gardening Seminar series at the Cascade Food Pantry. The times are not stated, but you can try to figure that out there. In fun events in McCall, there is a cross-country skiing and snowshoeing at the Meadow Creek Golf Resort from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For an adult day pass, it is $10, and for youth, it is $5. It will be going on until April 30th. In McCall Tuesday, there is a trivia night from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Bumps and Brew. In Cascade Friday, there is a swing dance class from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It is free for all ages to attend. It will be happening at the Valley Club building. It will be on country and line dance. If you have any questions, call Steve at 208-861-8486. Also in Cascade Friday, there is bingo at the Senior Center from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then in Cascade Thursday to Sunday, the ice skating rink is open at the Cascade Aquatic and Recreation Center. In other events in McCall Tuesday, there is the Tech Tuesday from 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. at the McCall Public Library. They'll be doing 3D printing. They'll be doing 3D printing, and they will have board games to play while they're waiting for the 3D printers to finish up because they take a little bit. For more information about anything talked about, go check the link in the description below. Moving on to our last and coldest, we have Northern Idaho. In performances in Sandpoint Wednesday, there's an open mic night at 6 p.m. at 411 Cedar Street. Also in Sandpoint Saturday, there is a fly fishing film tour at 5:30 p.m. They don't provide a location, so you might need to check on that. Then in Moscow Saturday, there's the Elvis film will be playing at the Kenworth Theater at 4 p.m. Also in Moscow Sunday, All Quiet on the Western Front will be showing at the Kenworth Theater at 4 p.m. And then lastly, in events coming up in Coeur d'Alene, March 31st, there is the Blues Festival. If you want to, go check that out if you're interested. In fun events in Moscow Tuesday, there is a Tuesday T-Birds Book Club meeting at 2 p.m. at the Moscow Public Library. Then in Sandpoint Thursday, there is a trivia night from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Paddler's Ale House. In Lewiston Thursday, there is a board game night from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the Lewiston Library. In Spokane Valley Thursday, there is a Suit Night concert at 7 p.m. at the Opportunity Presbyterian Church. In Lewiston Friday, there is a fish fry event at 6 p.m. at the All Saints Catholic Church. In Clarkston Friday, there is a St. Patrick's Day dinner at 7 p.m. at Clark's Height Garage. There will be live Irish music, jig dancing, and plenty of food. Admission is $7 a person. In Sandpoint Saturday, there is a comedy night at 7:30 p.m. at the Paddler's Ale House. Admission is $18 a person. And lastly, in fun events in Post Falls Saturday, there is a comedy show at 7 p.m. at the Draft Zone. In other events in Moscow Wednesday, there is Coffee with Legislator event at 4 p.m. In Lewiston Wednesday, there is an ebook, an audiobook open house from 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Lewiston Public Library. They're going to be talking about software and stuff to kind of help people learn how to do ebooks and audiobooks. And then in Moscow next Tuesday, the 21st, there is an apple tree grafting workshop from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Layton County Fair office. And then lastly, in Moscow next Wednesday, the 22nd, there is a State of Public Safety address from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 1912 Center. For more information on anything talked about, check the link in the description below. Moving on into news stories, we have our first one here titled Catalytic Converter Thefts on the Rise. This comes by KTVB7 by Andrew Bartline. According to the Boise Police Department, catalytic converter thefts are on the rise. In 2019, the police recorded 12 thefts, but in 2020, it increased to 160. That is 88 reports up from 2021. To combat this, some shops like Boise Muffler are installing guards, painting parts bright orange, and welding license plates numbers to converters. Also, the Idaho House is getting involved with House Bill 142 that will be adding catalytic converters and the materials found in them to the Idaho Scrap Dealers Act, which requires recyclers selling materials in the act their ID, license plate number, address, and signature. A side note, United Metal Recycling in Idaho is in favor of this bill. They said, quote, "We feel that adding catalytic converters to the bill will help law enforcement do their job more effectively and efficiently. We also believe it is important for Idaho to have a consistent and uniform scrap metal law statewide to provide clarity to both law enforcement and businesses," end quote. Which I am glad to hear that this is happening. Not the theft, obviously. I am not happy at that at all. But it is cool to see that they're adding it to that. I actually didn't even know that Idaho had such a bill as this for dealing with different scrap metal and stuff, which it sounds like kind of an ingenious thing. Granted, on the flip side, kind of a little bit of an invasion of privacy of whoever the scrap dealer is that's like, hey, we want your address, we want your signature, we want even your license plate number, we want everything, which is, I can understand someone being a little like, my privacy, please, if you don't mind. Can I do business without you knowing absolutely everything about my life? Hopefully this will cut down on it a little bit. The dealers will have to be a little bit more strict about how they're handling stuff when it comes to different metals and things. I can't remember what it is in catalytic converters. I mean, I heard about the theft rate and stuff that happens in California because of it. I even had a friend that was visiting over there. He wasn't visiting. He stayed there for like 6 months for a missions trip or whatever thing. And he even had 2 or 3 times where people tried to like jack up his car and steal the catalytic converter because there's certain metals in there that are really, really rare, and just trying to get that out real quick will make you a lot of money from what I hear. I don't know what the exact price tag is, but if you're in the Boise area, maybe be a little careful. I know, just kind of, this is a personal tip. I don't know if it would solve this issue. It wouldn't stop them from stealing your catalytic converter, that's for sure. But I have installed a dash cam in my car, and it has been a blessing so many times I won't go into that helps record and everything. So no matter what, if I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait a second, what happened to my car? I didn't remember this being here, or how did this get here? And sometimes there's really interesting videos that I get, whenever I go on road trips or something where there's maybe wildlife where I parked the car and went for a hike and I come back and I look at the footage and I'm like, well, that's interesting. I think the most fun one besides, the wildlife stuff is I remember one time giving my car to I went to the Toyota dealership for some stuff, and I went in there and I gave them to him to work on. There was like a recall or whatever on my car. And the dash cam was working and I completely forgot about it. And then I came back and then I realized I can look at the dash cam. So I was able to like see everything that was going on in the dealership and some of the things that people were like, not exact words, but could see the whole setup and all the cars and stuff they were doing in there. It was really kind of cool to see. I felt like a little bit of a spy. But in any case, coming back to the article, if you're in Boise, just be very careful what you're doing with your car there and try to protect it. Maybe take some time and go underneath your car and try to put some measures in there to block and stop people from stealing your catalytic converter. If you don't know what it is, it's basically kind of the box that's attached to your tailpipe, if I remember correctly. I mean, mechanic dudes are probably screaming at me at the moment. And it's used for kind of collecting the carbon emissions that come out of your tailpipe, so it's not quite as dirty. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but basically it's, it's attached to your tailpipe system there. So if you want to do some measures to kind of protect against that, maybe put some anti-theft things down there or try to serialize it or whatever, then by all means go ahead and do that to try to keep yourself safe. Because going from only 12 thefts to 160, that is a little bit of an increase for sure. Next one is Boise Gets more strict about downtown. This comes by the Boise Dev by Donde. So I will admit, as I was reading this article from the Boise Dev, I didn't quite understand, so bear with me as I'm trying to understand this, and maybe you are too. The city of Boise is trying to stop what they call the cruise, which is when people drive their cars around and around downtown Boise, making loud noises and smoke in the summer. To combat this, the city is considering changing 2 sections of its code. The first would have to do with sound, where they're trying to remove the need to record decibel levels to prove the sound was too loud. Instead, the new law would say, quote, unreasonable sound that can be heard 50 feet away, end quote. The city council stressed this would only apply to cars that have been aftermarket modified. The second change that they're trying to make is to raise fines and penalties. For right now, the max fine you can get for an infraction in Boise is $100. Brass Grass, who is the director of strategic initiatives in Boise, says that state law allows the city to have fines up to $300, which these new changes would allow the city of Boise to do. Granted, most of the fines would still be at $100. Now, if someone were to get fined once and then get fined a second time, they could be fined up to $1,000 and spend 6 months in jail. So I will admit, after writing the script for this article and everything, I understood it a little bit better, but not horribly well. It sounds like there's just people that, for lack of a better word, this is just what comes into my brain, are having a good time downtown and maybe are a little bit, have some alcohol in their system, we'll put it that way. And they're driving around and around, enjoying the summertime, driving, having friends, and enjoying whatever car they may have. It's a sports car or truck or whatever. And patrons in the city aren't quite liking that, and so they're trying to combat that. Part of me is like, okay, I get it. You don't want that. You want it to be more calm, more like a regular city situation, and that's fair. But on the other hand, drivers have a right to drive. If they want to drive around the block a little bit and sightsee and view, then they, I think, should be allowed to. I mean, as long as they're doing it responsibly and it's not choking up traffic too much, like we have traffic laws for that if you're unreasonably trying to do stuff that and enough people are doing it, then you can't do it because that's going to cause problems. I get, but then there's another side of me that's like, okay, cool. We're taking away the decimal level thing and just saying we're putting an objective like unreasonable sound that is 50 feet away. What is unreasonable now? You've taken away the definition. What is it defined as unreasonable? Do we take an opinion poll of everyone and be like, 50% of the businesses on this street say it's unreasonable? Well, at that point, you can start swaying a public opinion by paying people off and other stuff and trying to bribe or things. I mean, not that I think this would happen with this, but it seems less objective to a court rather than sitting there and having concrete evidence. They gave reasons why they're trying to move away from the decimal stuff, giving examples of where, since a lot of these things are like backfires, really loud cars, it's not something that's regularly happening. So it's really hard to record. Like it happens and then it's gone. So it's not a regular sound. So it's hard to do. Part of me would be like, okay, if we lived in 1980 or 70, I'd agree with you. But we live in the 21st century. Most people can download a app on their phone that uses the microphone. It's not perfect. I get it. It's not perfect. But that business owners can do that, download it, have it on their phone, and when they see that time of day or stuff, they can sit out there maybe a little bit, have their phone on, and see what that decimal level is, and record it, and then report it to police and stuff. And they've already got security cameras, I have no doubt, especially if you live downtown and there's a little bit more crime and stuff. And instead of taking this objective definition away, let's keep it. Objectivity helps with courts and laws and things. It's nice because us humans have a way of messing with subjective things and it makes it hard to then define. So part of me taking that away, I don't get. As for the fine stuff, I think that's fully within the right. If the city council, and no one opposes the city council in trying to do that they want to raise those fines on already existing laws on the book, then go for it. That's totally for you. And if someone gets caught, then they'll pay that higher fine, and you're, kind of punishing it in that degree, which makes sense. But I really think taking the decimal level thing away is going to make for a lot of confusion and a lot of people being really frustrated and mad of why they're getting fined when they can't even be definable. Well, I felt that your thing was an unreasonable sound. What? I was just walking down the street or wherever, that it could extend outside of cars and stuff. Then again, since it's a city council, I don't see bills or whatever that you could read and see the exact text. If someone has that, then please send it over, and I'd love to take a look at that. But yeah, what are your guys' opinion on this? Is this something that you think is a great idea? Or is it like, oh yeah, the intent was really good here, but the execution seems to be a little poor? Next one is Nut Milk Shop, opens up in Boise. This comes by the Boise Deb by Ann Daly. Short but worth talking about. There is a dairy-free / nut milk shop opening up in Boise. This is for those that can't have dairy milk. The best option for them is to have milk made from almonds or some other nut / grain. With that said, the name of the new shop is Milk, MYLK. They opened up their doors this last December in Boise on Fairview Avenue. They're selling milk made from oats, cashew, and almonds, which they hope to sell at local coffee shops and at Whole Foods in the future. Which personally, I'm a person who doesn't have any dietary restrictions when it comes to milk. I love milk. I like dairy. I'm going to continue to drink dairy as long as my body will allow me, because dairy is delicious. Now, I have many family members and many people, and I have no doubt you do too, that can't handle the dairy milk. Don't ask me why. I would be super, super curious if I had some time or stuff to research why that's the case, what happened. I know some people would say it's kind of the dairy culture and the way that we make our stuff and it's not raw and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into that at the moment, but anyways, suffice to say, people live a happier, healthier life when they don't have dairy. There are certain people that are like that, which is cool to see that this is coming into the valley, because for my family, I have a couple siblings that have to have dairy-free milk, nut milk or whatever. And I don't know if any of you else experienced it, but there was like a period there in the valley, I think like a couple months back, where it was hard to get almond milk. Like there were shortages in a sense where you would go and there would be barely any on the shelf of the name brand. I think there was the non-name brand, but we're picky human beings, aren't we? So something like this, having it local where you're like, hey, I can get it local. It doesn't matter. There's not a shipment. There's not all these things. I mean, yeah, they have to ship in all the nuts and stuff, but I'm assuming that's a little easier. They can do that in larger supplies and reserves. And then you can have a more reliable local source. I think is really, really cool and kind of filling that demand there. I really hope they add something kind of like some other like raw milk companies where you can have like a milk box outside and then they have people that run routes to pick it up. Because I think that would really help a lot for some people to have that ability and option before them. Overall, I thought it was worth sharing. It was worth kind of a little bit of a discussion, so I didn't put it in the quickies, but still really cool. You guys will have to let me know if you go to it, what you think of it, if it's any good, if the milk tastes different than the usual store-bought stuff. Yeah, but anywho, we'll move on to the next one here. Next one here is a little bit of an odd one. Boise startup blows up on TikTok. This comes by the Boise Dev by Donde. So there is a company called Bold Hue, which is based here in Idaho. They're working on a product that uses a device to scan your face and then uses an algorithm to find the best foundation for your type of skin, so like makeup. It's not open to the public yet, but they are doing testing. If you want, there is a wait list open for people that can sign up for that are interested for when they finally launch it. But with that said, the company posted a quick TikTok video showing off the device in action. This video blew up. In the 24 hours it was up, it got more than 2.3 million views, about 600,000 likes, and thousands of comments. I didn't go watch the video because, one, I don't have TikTok. I know you can like look through it through a browser, but personally, I am not the biggest fan of TikTok. If you ever see an account on TikTok for this channel, it is not me, because I am not going to make one. Because I don't want to support that, but that's a different thing, which is kind of cool to hear. I mean, I heard about this company, but I didn't know it was actually Idaho-based. The owner behind it was like, I think, an ex-NASA engineer, so that's kind of cool. It's always cool to see companies that kind of have that background in them. But just kind of another example of the interesting ways that we can apply algorithms and stuff in our lives that, you know, we sometimes look at it badly, and that's true, where you see kind of certain social media sites and they're using algorithms or things and you're like, is that really unbiased, or is that algorithm doing something? But here, this sounds like a really cool application to be like, hey, you can't have a private, makeup artist come into your house every single day and tell you what's going to be best for your type of skin and whatever else. I don't know enough about makeup. I'm a guy. But that you can have this piece of technology that you can pay a single time fee, use, scan, and then it'll recommend, the best thing for your face. Part of me wishes that this was like a one-time thing. I mean, I'm not a gal, so maybe you do need to check it regularly, but I feel like your face is probably one color. Your skin doesn't change color from what I understand very much. And then you would just scan it once, and then you would use that type of foundation or whatever, rather than having like a device that you regularly use and you only use it once. I don't quite understand that. I mean, ladies out there, maybe you can correct me if there's something that you're regularly having to change the type of foundation you're doing. From what I understand of foundation, it's like something you put on your face that then it matches your skin tone and then kind of uniforms it out, and then you can build the makeup over it or just use that to fill in any blemishes or stuff. But that's me. I don't know, but still cool. Worth sharing. I always like talking about articles and topics on here that are about local Idaho companies that are doing well, and this is cool to see. I wish them the best, and I hope the product helps them very well and does well. Next story here is 17 elks killed in a semi-collision. This comes by the East Idaho News by Rhett Nelson. Last Monday night at 9 p.m., a 2007 Peterbilt semi hit a group between 50 and 100 elk at mile marker 21.5. According to the sheriff's office, several elk were killed instantly, and others were severely injured and had to be put down. Brian Mays, who lives near the area of the crash, said the elk were standing in the middle of the road eating hay bales near his haystack. He guessed there was about 50 to 100 in total. He also said that they have reached out to the Idaho Fish and Game and Butte County Commissioner to try to get them to put up a sign warning drivers about the wildlife in the area. In this article, the East Idaho News said they reached out, but the county commission did not have any comment. With that said, the meat is going to a good place. Idaho law allows for roadkill, if reported in 24 hours, to be reused for the community. So the meat from the elk hit will be given to the community so it doesn't go to waste. Which, sad to hear. I mean, thankfully, it was a semi. I know elks and stuff, there are some stories out there. I mean, moose are more lethal from what I understand, but if you're on an average, like not semi-car, your sedan or minivan or stuff, the antlers and stuff, you can get hurt really, really bad, like death type of thing. But having a semi, you're a little bit more off the ground and a little bit safer. According to the article, if I remember correctly, the driver did try to avoid but wasn't able to. Thankfully, not all of the elk were killed, and it was only 17. I know for some people it's sad to hear because we love our wildlife and things. Part of the article was arguing that the Fish and Game might need to bring more hunters out there because there might be too many. I would argue the road needs to be adjusted, and also the hay bales and stuff. Just make sure that they can't be attracted to the area where the roadway is. Sad to hear that's the case, but on the flip side, I'm glad that Idaho law allows for the roadkill to be reused. No need for it to go to waste. Give it to people using the community. And also, I don't know if any of you guys have, but elk burgers are delicious. I love them. I don't have them very often because my family doesn't do hunting, sadly, and I am not that much of an expert in them myself. But I've had a couple of friends that have made me elk burgers and stuff, and I love them so much. They are so much better than cow. So much better. The meat is so much more rich and diverse in flavor, in my opinion. It's just wonderful. If you haven't had it, I highly recommend trying to have an elk burger as soon as possible because they are delicious. But sad to hear, thankfully, no one was hurt besides the elk, but that's not someone, that's an animal. And thankfully that will be put to good use for the community, and hopefully the county can figure out how to prevent this in the future when it's not a semi. Another little bit of a short one, but really worth talking about. Idaho is looking good for summer. This comes by KTV B7 by Abby Davis. As many of you have seen over the last month, Idaho has been getting a lot of snow and rain, which raises the question of how are we doing on water? Last year, if you recall, the water levels in the reserve were not looking good at all, but we were saved by a late rainy season. Even then, it was a little rough. Well, it appears that's not going to be the case this year. According to officials, we should see drought removal for almost the whole state except for the southern bit. Reservoirs are at about 60% of their capacity right now, plus we're also way above our usual average, which is obvious because like the last couple of years it's been low. As a person who likes to go fishing, it would bring me no more joy to see a Owyhee Reservoir finally full again. I remember when I was younger and I would go fishing with my grandpa. I remember there would be certain areas we get to fish and it was great and it's fun, but if you go there now, they've literally been dry for so long. There's trees on these big sandbars because there hasn't been that much water and that long of a time. So it'd be really, really cool to see that occur again, especially for fishing because fishing, I love going fishing. But also for agriculture, just having that excess water means we can start opening them up earlier for earlier watering, earlier crops. It just gives more flexibility to farmers. It gets more power for Idaho Power to use. Just all around, more water, more snow, more rain is great. I know we don't like it because it makes our commutes a little worse and a little bit more difficult. It makes things harder to try to get around and weather conditions and stuff. But overall, I am really, really looking forward to it continuing to snow just a little bit more, just tail end of April here, as much as all of us, including myself, really, really, really want it to be spring so we can go hiking and all the fun things that we do in Idaho and backpacking and mountain bike riding and going down the Boise River and stuff. We just need a little bit longer, just a little bit more snow, a little bit more rain, get them all nice and full, and then we can go back to being warm and come to spring, which I have no doubt we're all very, 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 very much looking forward to. But yeah, short little clip it, but I thought it was really worth sharing because, water in Idaho and the reservoirs is kind of a big deal. Idaho Falls Community Food Basket gets burglarized. This comes by the East Idaho News by Rat Nelson. Between 3 p.m. last Wednesday and 9 a.m. last Thursday, someone broke into the new Community Food Basket building For context, the building is the old meeting house for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The robbers caused between $3,000 and $5,000 in damages. According to the executive director, they got in by throwing a tire jack through the kitchen window. The thieves stole the tools that were being used for the remodeling of the building and destroyed old computers, printers, TVs, and a stone chessboard and other items the church left behind. The police are investigating the matter and are trying to find out who has done this. They did come by and take some fingerprints from the broken items. The food basket is asking people to report any suspicious activity near the building if they see any. Always sad to hear. I kind of wonder as well what's going on here, because it's not like there's a lot of value in the sense of, yeah, you got stuff, but why would you just go in and break and vandalize stuff unless there's a personal vendetta here? I don't know. Maybe it's in a gang area and they think that, the food pantry thing is a front for something. I could see that as well. I have no idea, but I am very curious personally as to what will be going on in the future, if they'll figure out what this is or who did it, hopefully. I mean, they should obviously figure out who did it, but it would really be interesting to hear what the motives are and why they're doing this, because it just doesn't seem... It's one thing if you're like, hey, there was this like really fancy hotel and they broke in and then they stole all this fancy stuff. Cool. Instead of like, oh, they went into a food pantry place where there wasn't any food yet, and it wasn't even fully rebuilt yet, but the ownership had switched, and they went in and they stole the tools, and then they kind of vandalized the entire place. Like, what is the motive there? Do you just like, oh, cool, we want to steal some equipment, and then, yay, while we're here, we'll break a bunch of stuff? I don't understand that logic at all, and I think there's probably a way better explanation for it, but my prayers go out to them. Hopefully, they'll be able to recover from that and adjust one step at a time here, and that they'll be able to get everything on their feet there, and the police will be able to figure out who is accountable and bring them to justice. Now, here is our last one and our fun one. I am very excited about this because this is a topic that I personally thought about doing myself. The title we have here is Aquaponics Farm Moving into Boise. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. So a week or two back, we talked about a gelato company moving into the industrial area near the Boise airport. Well, there is another very interesting business moving into the same area. Last Tuesday, the city of Boise approved a new type of agricultural business to move into the same area. The name of the company is Greenscape, which will be opening a 25,000 square foot environmentally controlled facility at 7050 South Federal. Now, you may be asking, how is an agricultural company moving into an industrial, and why do they need such a big climate-controlled building? That is a wonderful question, and it has to do with how they're growing their plants. They're going to be using a method called aquaponics, which is very similar to hydroponics. This is where they grow plants in watertight grow beds or tubes which flood or drain with super nutrient-rich water. The water is provided by big tanks of fish. The fish defecate, which releases nutrients that are not good for them, but are wonderful for the plants. So the water is taken out of the fish tank, run through the beds that have plants. The plants then filter the nutrients out and send the water back to the fish clean, thus allowing the plants to grow in the water instead of the dirt and the fish to have clean water. Now, this process might seem like you're using more water than the traditional way, which it does when you have to set it up and everything, but when it's done, very little water is lost since it's being cycled through the system over and over again. The only need to add water is when things evaporate, obviously. With that said, the company has told the city of Boise it expects to produce about 80,000 pounds of leafy greens and 20,000 pounds of whole fish yearly. I really thought about doing this at one point. I mean, down in Arizona and some warmer areas, and I'll explain in a second, they do it a lot. The main benefit behind it is by doing it without the soil, you cut down the chance of weeds, because weeds need, the soil to germinate and everything. And then on the other hand, when you do things like aquaponically or hydroponically, the main difference hydroponically is that you add artificial chemicals or nutrients into the water. Aquaponically uses fish to get those nutrients rather than having to use chemical byproducts and stuff to introduce that into the water. I personally am a fan of aquaponics, but if you don't have fish or the area or time to upkeep them, then hydroponics makes more sense, but aquaponics is a little bit more organic in my opinion. But when you do it in those two different ways, the plants actually have a really increased grow rate. A lot of the strawberries we eat and stuff from California, I know, are grown in hydroponic setups because there's a bunch of other reasons, which I'm not going to get into. But they do it primarily for that, just so the speed and ripening and harvest and stuff. Usually at a huge commercial level, aquaponics and hydroponics isn't done a lot because you have to set, rather than a field where it's just like, here's field, till, fertilize, grow, water, done. With aquaponics and hydroponics, you have to have a whole setup with a bunch of piping and beds and plastic and pumps and lines and all this other stuff to do. So the upfront cost is a lot more and it's a little bit more tricky. Now, the reason you don't see it outside, especially here in down in the southern part of the states where it stays warm, you can, is that the system requires for certain bacteria and nutrients to kind of build up in the system before it kind of comes online. And those bacteria and things can't exist when it freezes. So could you do aquaponics outdoors here in Idaho? Yes, you could. But the problem is that when you get to the freezing cold season, then you're not going to have any plants to then filter the water for the fish. And then it's going to kill a lot of that bacteria that would be useful and keep your system and everything going as you want it to. And it would just kind of bring the whole thing to a grinding halt. And it's just tricky to overwinter it rather than having it inside of like a big warehouse where it's always warm. You can always chug, or if you're just in a warm climate, it's way easier to just continually keep doing it all year long and continually. The also nice benefit, like they said here kind of at the end, is that it produces fish, that you get leafy greens, but then you can also have protein off that food source, which is really cool. It'll be interesting to see as it goes forward if in the Treasure Valley or especially just in Boise at farmer markets you start seeing this show up, or if they're going to sell it to stores. I would love to take a tour of their place because I just nerd out about this stuff. The idea of being able to have a setup outside, like a raised grow bed or whatever, and I can grow all my vegetables, no weeds or whatever else. I got fish, I got vegetables and everything. Is just a wonderful, amazing idea, and I think it would be really cool to do. But maybe that's just me. I come from a background of doing more traditional gardening. My grandparents did gardening for years and years, and it is curious to kind of see the new methods that are coming out. But yeah, this was kind of the fun, interesting article. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll move on to the quickies here. Starting off with our first quickie here, March 14th, school voting time. This comes by KTVB 7 by staff. March 14th is bond and levy election day for Idaho schools. Not every school is having an election, but there is a link below. You can find a list of all of them. KTVB 7 has made a wonderful list of them. Former Governor Phil Batt passed away. This comes by several sources, so you can kind of check that out. 2 Saturdays ago, on March 14th, the 29th governor of Idaho passed away. He passed away on his 96th birthday and the day Idaho became a territory. He served as the governor from 1995 to 1999 and was also a legislator, lieutenant governor, and Idaho Republican Party chairman. Last Thursday, his body was honorably transferred to the Capitol for a ceremony to honor his passing. And then after that Friday, he was transferred to the Capitol Rotunda at the Cathedral of the Rockies, and a funeral service was held. Update on McCall Bar and Church. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. A few weeks back, we talked about a bar that was trying to move into McCall, but the place that it was intended to go into was just down the way from a church, so the city council was trying to be careful about approving it or not. Last we heard, the church was fine with it as long as the bar was not open on Sunday. Well, we have an update on that story. The church has changed its position, saying it strongly is opposed. Quote, "I am not opposed to anyone who wants to create an opportunity to make a living for themselves," said Church Reverend Charlotte Havlicek. Sorry if I got it wrong. Wrote, "However, there are rules, regulations, and laws that govern where such activities take place. Residential areas, schools, and churches have always been off limits to these types of businesses for obvious reasons. I think the laws should not be vacated to grant such a permit. In doing so, we set a precedent that others will expect." End quote. After the last city council meeting, the mayor of McCall and 3 city council members changed their position. The building is now for sale. New coffee shop opening in Boise. This comes by the Boise Dev by Gretchen Parsons. There is a coffee and roastery company called Pine Coffee Supply moving into downtown Boise. The company started in Wyoming in 2017 and has grown since. They're moving into what used to be Texicitio building on the western edge of Boise. They're planning to be open by April 30th of this year. Change to Idaho driver's license. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. The Idaho Department of Transportation has announced that they'll be doing a new design for Idaho's driver's licenses. According to them, it is good to change the design every couple of years to deal with counterfeiters and update the technology in them. The new design will have the Idaho state bird, the mountain bluebird, as the background for the card. If you want to see a photo, you can check the link in the description below. Avian influenza confirmed in Bingham County. This comes by the East Idaho News by staff. Last Tuesday, the Idaho Department of Agriculture confirmed that a flock of chickens in Bingham County tested positive for avian influenza. This is a disease that causes high death rates in chickens. It can be sudden or it can be preceded by a decrease in appetite, activity, difficulty breathing, and or dark combs and wattles. They are recommending people be careful with their chickens to make sure they don't get exposed and spread the disease because it is highly contagious. Pocatello water slide may be back soon. This comes by the East Idaho News by Kalama Hines. The water slide at the Rose Park Aquatic Complex is coming back. This comes as the Mildred family donated $140,000 to the city. The family was close with the aquatic complex, so they wanted their money to bring back the slide. As many of you may or may not know, the slide closed back in April 2020. Since then, many ideas have been passed around, but the topic of bringing the slide back has been the largest. With that said, there are a lot of things going on, but it is possible we may see the slide back in running by 2025. Last quickie here, D&B Caldwell store closes. This comes from my grandparents that kind of let me onto this. The D&B that used to be on Cleveland Boulevard is no longer there. If you drive by, you will see the sign is gone and things are being packed up inside. But do not fear, D&B has not left Caldwell. It has just moved. They have a brand new location at 620 Smead PKWY, Caldwell, Idaho, just off the Franklin exit heading east. Moving into the politics, for those that are new, the politics is divided into two halves. The first half is facts, and the second half is discussions. Facts is just hard information about what has happened politically at the legislature, executive, and other branches of the Idaho government this last week. And then the second half is a little bit of a discussion with my opinions and viewpoints on those topics. If you don't like that, then please just listen to the facts section and then tune off. But if you want to hear my opinion, a little bit of discussion, and hopefully in the future some interviews, then please listen to the discussion section of politics. First off, we have the House and Senate. So there's a lot that happens each week in the House and Senate. I can't go over every bill that is working its way through. So I'll share as many as possible and the ones that seem the most significant. If you want to see everything, there is going to be a link below where you can see the House and Senate Daily Journal that has all the things that are going on. Starting off with the House bills that are making their way through, we have House Bill 241 related to Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act. Adds to existing laws to establish the Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Edward H. Hill and Representative Judy Boyle. The status of the bill is that it was read for the first time. Then we have House Bill 239 related to voting, amends existing laws regarding the unlawfulness of aliens voting in Idaho. The sponsor of the bill is Dale R. Hawkins, and the status is that it was read for the first time. Moving on into bills passed, we have House Bill 274 related to communication security. Adds to existing laws to prohibit state employees from using or downloading TikTok on state-issued devices. To provide that the state shall implement controls to prevent the use of TikTok on state-issued devices and to provide a penalty. The sponsor of the bill is Edward H. Hill and Senator Chris Trackle. The bill passed with a vote of 67-3-0. Then we come to House Bill 269 related to education, adds to existing laws to establish career exploration courses. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Dave Lent. The bill passed with a vote of 45-25. Then we have House Joint Memorial 2 related to abortion, states findings of the legislature, and calls on Congress to restrict the jurisdiction of federal courts from hearing cases regarding to states' legislative authorities in legislation on abortion. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Phil Hart. The bill passed with a vote of 56-12-2. Then we have House Bill 242 related to abortion, amends and adds to existing laws to provide for the crime of abortion trafficking, to provide certain requirements and restrictions on civil action, and to provide prosecuting authority for Attorney General. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Barbara Ahart and Kevin Andrus. The bill passed with a vote of 57-21-1. Then we come to the last one of bills passed. We have House Bill 265 related to sexual exhibition, adds to existing laws to provide that certain persons and institutions must take reasonable steps to restrict the access of minors in certain instances, to provide for civil action in certain instances, and to prohibit the use of public facilities and public assets for sexual exhibition. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Ben Taves and Blaine Gonzatti. The bill passed with a vote of 48-21-1. Next up, we have the Senate and bills working their way through. We have Senate Bill 1057 related to the protection of minors, adds to existing laws to establish the Parental Right Protections of Minors Act to protect minors from exposure of harmful materials on certain devices. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Kevin Cook and Senator James R. Just. The status of it is that it was read for the first time and is in committee. Then you have House Bill 82 related to Idaho Dietary Supplement Act, adds to existing law to enact the Idaho Dietary Supplement Act, which provides that the production, marketing, distribution, sale, and use of dietary supplements that are legal as of July 1st, 2022 in Idaho shall remain legal in Idaho regardless of any changes to federal law or regulation. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Jason Gallagher. It passed the House and is filed for first reading in the Senate. Then we come to House Bill 173 related to property, amends existing laws to provide that foreign governments or foreign state-controlled enterprises shall not purchase, acquire, or hold any interest in certain types of property in Idaho. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Judy Boyle and Edward H. Hill. The status of the bill is that it passed the House and is filed for first reading in the Senate. Then we have House Bill 180 related to state treasury, amends existing laws to provide that idle monies may be invested in physical gold and silver in certain instances. The sponsor of the bill is Barbara Earhart and Senator Phil Hart. The status of the bill is that it passed the House and is filed for first reading in the Senate. Then we have Senate Bill 1162 related to motor vehicles, adds to existing laws to prohibit smoking or vaping in a motor vehicle if a minor is present. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Dave Lent and Luke Riggs. The status of it is that it was filed for first reading. Then we come to House Bill 186, Methods of Execution, amends existing laws to provide for execution by firing squad and to provide certain requirements prior to an execution. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Bruce D. Skog and Senator Doug Ricks. The status of the bill is that it was filed for first reading. And then we come to our last one working its way through. We have Senate Bill 1099 related to the protection of pupil and parental right acts, adds to existing laws to enact Protection of Pupil and Parental Right Act. The sponsor of the bill is Ben Taves. The status is that it is recommended to pass and filed for second reading. And bills passed in the Senate, we have House Bill 92 related to education, adds to existing laws to require financial literacy courses in certain grades. The sponsor of the bill is Representative James Petsky and Debbie Critchfield. The bill passed the Senate and House. Then we have House Bill 133 related to motor vehicles, amends existing laws to allow private parental driver's education. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Ron Mendive. The bill passed the House and Senate. Then we have House Bill 116, Consumer Protections, amends existing laws to provide provisions regarding automatic subscription renewal cancellations. The sponsor of the bill is Representative Charlie Shepard, Senator Julie Van Orden, and Kate Haas. The bill passed the Senate and the House. Then we have Senate Bill 1071 related to education, amends existing laws to prohibit instruction on human sexuality, sexual orientation, or gender identity prior to 5th grade. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Ben Taze, and the bill passed with a vote of 28-7-0. Then we come to Senate Bill 1056 related to military and militia, repeals and adds to existing law to prohibit cities and towns from supporting certain military companies or organizations and to provide exemptions. The sponsor of the bill is Daniel D. Foreman. The bill passed with a vote of 24-9-2. And then we come to our last bill passed. We have Senate Bill 1108 related to tobacco taxes, amends existing laws to provide for a tobacco tax cap of 50 cents per cigar. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Carl J. Burke, Tregay Burnt, and Representative Jordan Redmond. The bill passed with a vote of 31-2. Now moving into the discussion section of politics, we'll start off with the House here with House Bill 242 related to abortion, adds to and amends existing laws to provide for the crime of abortion trafficking, to provide certain requirements and restrictions on civil actions, and to provide prosecutory authority for Attorney General. Sponsor is Representative Barbara Earhart and Kevin Andrus. The status of it is passed the House and is sent to the Senate. So we talked about this last week, so this is more or less an update. It passed the Senate with a vote of 57-12-1, is now moving to the Senate. For those last week that may or may not have heard the discussion on this bill is making it a crime to assist women in getting an abortion in the state of Idaho. The key here is in the state, if a grown adult travels outside the state of Idaho to get an abortion, this law would not apply. But if anyone in the state of Idaho helps a minor get out of the state to get an abortion without the knowledge of a parent or guardian, they will be subject to this law. Anyone who commits the crime of abortion trafficking can get no less than 2 years and no more than 5 years in state prison. Plus, there's some other punishment for medical professionals and other people involved in committing the crime if that's the case. Which I am glad to hear that this is moving forward personally. You know, we have already the law in the book that abortion is not legal here in Idaho, except for some rare exceptions, if I remember correctly. So I'm glad to see that this is moving forward. I'm not going to have a whole ton of discussion on this, but I just wanted to update it and point it out in the discussion that I'm glad to see this is moving forward. I know some people I've talked about and stuff have said, you know, why have this bill when it's not going to even deal with all the people that are just going to drive outside the state to get that abortion? And, you know, that is a fair point, but I would say it's better to have it there to show that support in the state to say, hey, we are still fighting this, and in all forms, that's what we want to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do in the future. Is it the most effective? No, because someone that's a grown adult can still drive outside the state, but at the end of the day, that's part of kind of the blessing of America, that you can kind of vote with the different state that you have and where you want to be. I would say if you live in the state of Idaho and you're a pro-abortion person, as crazy it might sound, just move outside the state. Just move. Go over the border to Oregon, okay? And if you have friends and stuff here, then you can just come over the border to visit and do commerce, but go somewhere where it's aligned with your politics. That's the joy of America, that you can move to whatever state you like that supports your values and vote with your residents. You can vote with your money. You can vote with your residents. You can vote with your voice. You can vote with every action you take. So remember that when you're doing stuff, be it in for or against certain things. Next one here is also kind of a really short one, but I really wanted to point it out. House Bill 274 related to communication security adds to existing laws to prohibit state employees from using or downloading TikTok on state-issued devices, to provide the state shall implement control to prevent the use of TikTok on state-issued devices, and to provide a penalty. I am glad to hear this personally because, like, one might say it's a private company. You know, they can do what they want and what they don't want, and that's fair. I would also say the government has every right to decide what it does or doesn't want on its devices. It's not forcing citizens. It's just saying, hey, if you work for the government and you have a government-issued device that's interacting with government things, we don't want it on there. You might ask, well, why? What is the problem with TikTok? Well, the answer I'd give to you is, yeah. Is it a company? Yes, but you have to understand how things work in China. At a fundamental level, as best as I understand, I could be wrong. If I am wrong, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. that companies in China are companies, but there is companies as so far as they get to manage all their stuff, but at any point the Chinese government has all authority to intercede. So yeah, it's a Chinese company, TikTok, and all their servers are here and blah, blah, blah. But at any point if the Chinese Communist Party wants access to some device that has TikTok or something, they can have it instantly. There is no stopping them in China from having it, and they have full control and oversight. So any company that comes out of China that's interacting in Western markets, it's basically a puppet. You know, I have no doubt there's probably good intentions at times in some of these Chinese companies, and they're people just trying to make a living. Totally understand that. But you have to understand where they're coming from and the type of government that's behind them that can pull these massive strings and kind of violate certain amounts of privacy. And also, I would encourage you, if you're someone who uses TikTok, it is an app that is constantly feeding the Communist Chinese Party. Not that I have anything against the Chinese people, but the Communist Chinese Party, who is committing genocide and tons of horrible things. And in every way, in all of our laws, we should fight and hope for the downfall of the Communist Party because it is not good. It doesn't tolerate other religions and stuff. They're torturing people over there in Uyghur concentration camps and other stuff. And we shouldn't be giving our money, our time, our resources as a country to a country that wants our downfall. China wants to become the premier world leader and wants to see the downfall of the USA in international politics. And we don't want that as Americans. We want America to be great. And we want our country to do well. No matter what part of the political aisle you're on, we should fight China. And so I'm glad to see that this is the case, not mounting it outright. That would be something that the federal government would be doing, but just taking another step to kind of limit the amount of TikTok that is open on devices. And I would recommend for yourself, just get off the application. You've got YouTube Shorts, you got Instagram, you've got so many other stuff. Put your eyeballs where your mouth is. If you don't like China, then don't use TikTok would be my recommendation. Here's the last one I wanted to discuss on House Bill matters. We have House Bill 265 related to sexual exhibition, adds to existing laws to provide that certain persons and institutions may take reasonable steps to restrict the access of minor in certain instances, to provide for a civil action in certain instances, and to prohibit the use of public facilities and public assets for sexual exhibition. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Ben Taze and Blaine Gonzatti. The bill passed with a vote of 48-21-1. So we talked about this bill last week, but this seems to be a different number, so I'm guessing the first version of this bill failed in committee, and this one is a second try with some changes. With it said, when I read through the bill, it looks pretty much the same. I must be missing something. It looks pretty much the same. I know I must be missing something because it still states the same thing as the last one, that it would prevent minors from seeing sexually explicit events, but it would not prevent the events, just requiring ID at the door and would not allow them in public places. The penalty is the same, except for the fact, I think this is where they did change it, where it's only a fine. I didn't see any context in there talking about misdemeanors like the last one had. So they've kind of laxed the punishment that they have on it, which honestly, I was hoping that the punishment would be greater, that we would have the same level of punishment for letting a minor see sexually explicit events and different things as we would for, allowing a minor to consume alcohol and giving that to them, which I think can be a massive fine and some jail time and stuff. I would hope that would be the case, but in any case, like I've talked about before, and I kind of mentioned in a comment somewhere, I don't know if it was Twitter or YouTube, that it is better to get this on the books. Let's get it on the books. Let's get it through, right? And then afterwards, you can raise the penalties. You can raise that, but you need it on the books first. So if that's what Blaine and Ben Taze are doing, then all power to them. I really hope it goes through. And if this is something you really want, please, everyone that listens to the shorts, listen to everything, please go and write your representatives. Because the crazy thing to think about, and I really want to point this out, and I noticed this when I was writing, 21 of Idaho's House representatives voted no. 21 of them voted no to a bill that would stop a 13-year-old from seeing some performer doing a sexual act on a stage, or would prevent these venues being out at public parks. If one of those is your senators, I would representatives, I would highly beg of you to respond to them, because this is not good. This is not good at all. I don't know what side of the aisle you may be or not be on, but I'm pleading with you. This is not a good thing. You're talking about, some people have talked about liberty of expression and saying that all voices need to be heard. And yes, we need to have these discussions, but have it with adults. Don't have it with children that are developing and aren't adults yet. That should be our line. that children, those that are minors, are not involved, and they need to develop their brains and need to understand logic and reason before they should be starting in this public discourse on topics if they want that or not. It should not be for minors. It should be for adults, and we should be able to all get around it. We're not banning these events. We're not banning them from existing or happening in the state for those that are adults. We are saying that no, it is not available to minors. This is not an essential thing for minors to understand and see. This is an adult matter and should be seen by adults and not children. And if you have one of those 21 senators is your senator, I'm pleading with you, give them a mouthful and tell them you don't want it. Take some time. It only takes a little bit to go search up what your senator or representative is, find their phone number or even their email, and just send them a quick email. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It could just be like, I saw that you voted against House Bill 265, and I am not okay with that. Do not do that again, please. I really wanted that bill to go through. It was important, and I think it is right, and that what you did was wrong. And please, please let them know. Because at the end of the day, I have no doubt there's some senators, as much as I would disagree with the logic that they're using, would say, hey, I'm trying to do the will of the people, and they feel that the will of the people is not to have this bill. And you can change that by letting them know. So with that said, if this is something you really want, please find your Senate representative and write them and let them know what you want or don't want with this bill. Because at the end of the day, like anything, I really would want the will of Idaho to be done and not somebody trying to manipulate or dictate it. Now, moving into the Senate, the first bill I wanted to talk about, and I would say is kind of the biggest one, and the verbiage kind of makes it fly under the radar. We have Senate Bill 1057, related to protection of minors as to existing laws to establish Parental Right Protections of Minors Act to protect minors from exposure of harmful materials on certain devices. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Kevin Cook and Senator James R. Just. It was read for the first time and is in committee currently. Now, I did want to read this here. Like all laws, I would stress this like I do with my friends and people that I chat with. Every law, there is the intent of the law. What is the intent behind it? What are they wanting to do with the law? And then there is the practical application of then how do you then work out that law? How does it work? How does it interact? How is it enforced in law? And there are many times where you have laws where the idea and hope behind it is a good and just intention, but the application is bad. And that's why we have this process to refine those. That, okay, we have our intent, cool. Now let's figure out the applicable way to apply this, or the intent is horrible and we need to remove it. So with that said, I do want to read here real quick a chunk out of the bill that states the intent of this. Quoting here, Declaration of Policy, the Idaho State Legislature recognizes the importance of mental health and the growth and education of minors, and a need to protect minors from accessing or downloading pornographic content that is harmful. Declare it to be the policy of the state to promote mental health for minors and to adopt a comprehensive and proactive approach for reducing minors' access to harmful content. So in short, if passed, this bill would require electronic manufacturers to put a filter on all smartphone, tablets, wireless networks, and mobile networks to filter harmful content on minors' devices. This would be an opt-out program and would be on all devices by default. With that said, there may be some that are concerned about privacy due to the fact that the bill defines a filter as, quote, means software installed on a device that is capable of preventing the device from accessing or displaying material that is harmful to minors through the internet or any application owned and controlled by the manufacturer and installed on the device, end quote. But if you turn to page 2, lines 29 to 39, it states that the user of a proper age will be given a passcode to unlock the filter or website or deactivate and or uninstall the filter. Now, with that said, as for penalties, those that unlock their devices for minors to view can get a fine starting at about $5,000 and ending at about $40,000. Also, for a second violation, you can get $50,000 fine and possibly up to 1 year in prison. Which I understand kind of some of the privacy concerns some people have on this matter related to the fact that it's a filter and it's something that's managing the media in a sense that your device is consuming and seeing and you're getting able to have access to. But on the other hand, I would appeal to that person when you look here at the verbiage after reading it and stuff and talking about what is the filter and then the controls that are given to you. it is something that says, hey, if you're a minor, then yeah, we are filtering what you're seeing because there are things that are bad for you. And as a society here in Idaho, we're deeming that it's not good for you to see those things. And then we need to prevent you from seeing those until you're old enough. But if you're old enough, you can take those filters off. You don't even have to have it. You can uninstall the filter according to the verbiage in the document. You don't even have to have it on there. But by default, it's going to be on there. And to get it off, you're going to need a passcode to do that in the state of Idaho, which it gets into this area of freedom of information. What is free and what is not free? Well, I would argue if something is bad, something is not just, like, for instance, live footage of like Taliban murdering or whatever. We as a society deem what we want and what we don't want. We don't want to consume bad content because from a Christian perspective, what you take in, what you eat, what you listen, what you hear affects you. It does. And what then you proceed in your heart and what you think and how you act it out. And I think this is a great bill that we are saying, hey, if you're old enough, fine, you can make your own choices. But in the young development of a kid below the age of 18, yeah, one can make the argument that they're already kind of getting into that stuff at 13 in a sense, but let us try to prevent it to a point. At the other point, then it lands on the parents to handle that. And if they're not doing a good job with their children about teaching them and preventing them from going down roads they shouldn't at that age, then that's on them and it shouldn't be the state. But at a certain level, this is something the state can do to help that process along and not have it so publicly available for content that is so addictive. Pornography is something that is so addictive to the human brain. It's up there with heroin and cocaine. It is so addictive. So I am very, very glad to see that they're doing this. It'll be interesting to see if it makes its way through, what variations or changes are made, and if it does actually get passed into law, what that implication looks like and how that'll look going forward in the state of Idaho. Now, I got a couple other bills here to run through, but I'm just going to run through them really quickly here, give a little bit of an opinion stuff. There's not a lot of discussion I can give on these, but just more the fact that I wanted to make sure to give them a little extra time and point them out here because we're kind of running out with a little bit of time on the podcast here, so I just kind of have to wrap it up here. We have House Bill 173 related to property amends existing laws to provide that foreign governments or foreign state-controlled enterprises shall not purchase, acquire, or hold interest in certain types of property in Idaho. In short, as it appears, this bill would ban entities other than the federal government, Idaho, or U.S.-based companies having controlling interest in agricultural land, water rights, mining claims, or mineral rights in the state of Idaho. This would also include U.S. companies that have an outside controlling interest that is owned more than 51% of the company. So if you've got a U.S. company and like 51% of it is owned by China, we'll go with that case, so they're the big one that does that, then they would be banned from doing that. I think this is a great law to kind of say, hey, Idaho, things in the state of Idaho and in America in general should be owned by America and shouldn't be bought by outside entities that then dictate our laws and rules on those properties. There's a point of private ownership, but when it's private ownership to maliciously take away our sovereignty, we need to remove this. Then moving on to the next one, we have House Bill 180 related to state treasury. Amends existing law to provide that idle money may be invested in physical gold or silver in certain instances. I'm not going to go into super depth on this, but as you can tell, basically just stating that Idaho can take some of its funds and invest it in gold and silver in certain instances. Then we have House Bill 92 related to education. Amends existing laws to require financial literacy courses in certain grades. After reading this and going through this, we talked about this last week, but in general, just an update. It passed the House and passed the Senate. So that means it's going to be fully passed. It just has to go to the governor's desk to get signed and everything. Basically, what this requires for public schools to teach certain courses in financial literacy, I think for 5th grade or certain grades in that sense, to teach about general stuff related to how stocks, how to budget, how does credit work, how do you responsibly use a credit card, all that stuff, which I think is great, and I'm glad it made it all the way through. Yay, praise the Lord. Then we come to Senate Bill 1071 related to education. Amends existing laws to prohibit instruction on human sexuality, sexual orientation, or gender identity prior to 5th grade. This one passed with a vote of 28-7-0. So really glad to see that it had such a massive majority in the House. I'm surprised that or not the House, the Senate. I am still very surprised that 7 people voted against it. I'm really glad that no one did the absentee thing. I really dislike when senators do that, where they're like, well, I didn't vote no for it and I didn't vote yes for it, so I'm going to sit on the sidelines. No, vote, gosh darn it. But yeah, as this states, it would set a limit in the state of Idaho of when sexual topics can be talked about in school. In this bill, I think my notes have it here that would be 5th grade. So I think this is great. There's a certain age that those things can be talked about. Another point, not. The kid needs to get old enough at a point that they can comprehend that in a healthy, well-mannered way. Then we come to the last one, which is a just kind of funny one, and I thought it was worth sharing. Senate Bill 1108 related to tobacco taxes. Amends existing law to provide for a tobacco tax cap of 50 cents per cigar. I almost feel like this was just a funny joke that some senators came up with, and they were like, hey, I got a funny one, Bill. You know what we should do? We should write a law that prevents the capping of cigars, because that would be the most Republican thing ever to do. It's just funny. So funny. And I thought I would just point it out. The bill is really short. If you're willing to have a little bit of an evening read, just jump into it. It's a fun little read to go into, but I thought it was just funny to see. Now we just have one story here. You might be wondering, what do you mean stories? Well, this is where I had a news article and then it sent me over to something. And so then I have all that. So maybe this isn't the best setup, but anywho, it's a story. I have one here and then we'll close out for the day. It's related to Senate bill removing ban on public displays of firearms. This comes by several sources. It is a very short bill, but has some pretty big implications. It is not writing a new law, but actually refining a current law. As of right now, it is illegal in the state of Idaho to parade in public with firearms and to have a private militia. This bill would remove those restrictions and replace it with a restriction saying that cities and towns in Idaho cannot raise funds for anything other than the National Guard. This means raising money for firearms for citizens with equipment, uniforms, or any other military regard would be banned. But instead, it would allow for people to have public displays of firearms and private militias. It just means the city or town wouldn't be able to fund those. The number of the bill is Senate Bill 1056, related to military and militia. Repeals and adds to existing laws prohibit cities and towns from supporting certain military companies or organizations and to provide exemptions. It passed with a vote of 24-9-2. The only reason I remember this is because I was reading the article. This is from the senator up from Moscow, which is kind of interesting to hear. I would have expected it to be from a little bit of a redder part of the state. That's one of the rare blue parts up north, but thank you, sir. I think this is a wonderful, great bill. I'm surprised that on the law books, it was even something that said that you couldn't parade in public with firearms. That's something that should be allowed as long as you're responsibly handling them. It's fine. It's firearms. I mean, in my opinion, and I know much people are different with this, more firearms, the better. The more firearms you have in the world, the more that a criminal understands, hey, I went into this mall, but there are probably 16 guns around me right now. And if I try to do anything, I'm going to get shot. Well, then that really decreases the chances of someone trying to do something crazy. But it's this psychological idea behind it, is that we should be having more firearms, not less, because it deters the likelihood of people wanting to do shootings at grocery stores, at malls, and at different places. But in any case, also the fact that, the state should not be involved in saying that you can't have private militias. That's another thing that I am surprised that is involved in the Idaho state law. I'm glad they changed it accordingly as they have now. Kind of weird saying that cities can't equip their citizens. I mean, if they want to, I think they should be allowed to. But I'll take the win when I can get it, right? In closing, thank you for listening to the whole podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and it was valuable for you. If I missed something, got something wrong, or you have some advice for the show, then send me an email at localyocalidaho2022@gmail.com or tweet me at localyocalidaho on Twitter. This show is a one-man show, so I can't afford to go over everything, but I hope I can cover as many things as possible. Thank you for your help and support. That's all for now, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your week. Godspeed.